Have you ever just held back, decided not to say what you're really thinking just to avoid a fight? Yeah, pretty much all of us have. We tend to think that speaking your mind is just a one-way ticket to conflict. But what if it's not? What if it's actually a skill, something you can get better at, something that could actually make your relationships stronger? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. So, how about this one? Hate disagreeing with people? Ugh, yeah, you know that feeling, right? That little knot in your stomach when you know you need to push back on what someone just said. Maybe it's a friend, your boss, even your parents. We've all felt it. It's just awkward, it's uncomfortable. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be a big blowout fight. I mean, let's be real, it's just easier to agree, isn't it? Just nod and smile, it's the path of least resistance. But what's really interesting is that the research we're looking at says something totally different. It suggests that those exact moments, those little points of friction, are actually where the magic happens. If we learn how to handle them right, that's where we can actually grow and, understand each other a whole lot better. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to build what I'm calling a communication toolkit. First, we'll talk about the art of disagreeing itself. Then we'll get into the right mindset. After that, choosing your words. We'll even touch on a little grammar to pull it all together. And finally, we'll have our complete toolkit. All right, let's dive into part one, the art of disagreeing. Before we can fix something, we kind of have to understand why it's broken in the first place. So why is this so tough for so many of us? So it turns out most of us get stuck in one of two modes. You've got the avoiders, right? The people who just clam up, say nothing, and let it slide. Then you have the opposite, where we get kind of heated, lose our cool, and maybe say something we wish we could take back later. And look, neither of those really works, does it? There's got to be a third option. And that third option, that better way, well, it all starts right here, in your head. This brings us to section 2, the respectful mindset. Honestly, this is probably the most important tool in the whole kit. It's all about the mental prep work you do before you even open your mouth. So, what we've got here is a really clear 5-step framework. Step 1, don't make it personal. Step 2, avoid putting down their ideas. 3 is a big one, use I statements. 4, you gotta listen to what they're actually saying. And 5, maybe the toughest one, stay calm. Let's break these down. Okay, this first one looks super simple on the surface, but wow, is it powerful. Think about it. When you start to feel that heat rising, that little bit of frustration, just take a breath and tell yourself, I'm disagreeing with the idea, not the person. That one little mental flip can change everything. It turns a potential fight into just a conversation. And that brings us to maybe the most practical tool of all, the I statement. I mean, just look at this. When you say, you always do this, what happens? Instant defense mode, right? It's an accusation. But if you start with, I feel overwhelmed, well, who can argue with how you feel? It's not an attack, it's just you sharing your experience. Shifting that frame is a total game changer. And then there's this. Listen. And I don't just mean be quiet while they're talking, I mean really listen. So many of us are just waiting for a gap so we can jump in and make our point. Instead, try to actually understand where they're coming from. A good test is if you can say their point back to them in your own words. When you do that, you're showing respect. And when people feel respected, they're way more likely to listen to you too. Okay, so we've got the mindset down. That's the foundation. Now we need the actual words to build on it. So let's move into our next section, choosing your words. This is where we take all that internal work and turn it into something we can actually say out loud. Which leads us to the big question, right? But what do you actually say? It's all well and good to think respectfully, but what words come out of your mouth? Especially when you're just trying to say what you like or don't like. I like is fine, it's the default, but we can do so much better. Think about these. I enjoy, I'm fond of, I'm really into, or even I'm keen on. Each one has a slightly different flavor, right? I appreciate sounds different from I love. Just expanding your vocabulary like this makes you sound so much more specific and, honestly, more interesting. Okay, so we've got the mindset, we've got some new words, now for what you might call the instruction manual. Section 4 is all about the grammar of preference. Now, don't worry, this isn't going to be a stuffy grammar lesson, but knowing a few of these basic patterns, it's going to make you feel way more confident when you speak. This chart really lays it all out pretty clearly. You see how some verbs like enjoy and mind need that ing verb after them? Like, I enjoy reading. But then others, like want or plan, need the to version. I planned to go. And then you've got weird ones, like would rather, that just take the plain old verb. We would rather cook. It's just a little matching game, really. And yeah, as this little character here is saying, sorry, there isn't one magic rule to learn them all. You kind of just have to learn which verbs go with which pattern. But stick with me because we're going to look at one example that's a little tricky, but once you get it, it makes a huge difference. Okay, let's talk about the verb stop. If you use stop with an ing word, it means you quit doing that thing for good. So she stopped smoking means she's done. She's not a smoker anymore. The activity is over. But check this out. If you use stop with to plus a verb, the meaning completely changes. We stopped to have a drink. That means you were doing something else, like maybe walking, and you pause that activity in order to have a drink. See? Two totally different meanings from one tiny change. This is why this grammar stuff actually matters. And you can see how this plays out in a super simple everyday situation like this one. Someone throws out the question, hey, would you rather play soccer or watch soccer? One person might say, oh, I'd rather play, using that base verb. And their friend could say, nah, I enjoy watching, using the ing form. They're both just naturally expressing what they prefer, using the patterns we just talked about. Okay, it is time to put this all together. We've talked about the mindset, the words, the grammar. We've got all the pieces. So for our last section, let's assemble that communication toolkit. And here it is in a nutshell, your toolkit for having way better conversations. First, the mindset. Stay calm, stay respectful. Second, the phrasing. Use those I statements. Third, the vocabulary. Get bigger than just I like. And finally, the grammar. Make sure you're matching the right verbs to the right patterns. That's it. That's the whole shebang. And look, this is why it's so important. This isn't just a boring grammar explainer. It's about connecting with people better. It's about really understanding each other. So now that you have this toolkit, I'll leave you with a question to think about. What's one conversation, just one, that you're going to handle differently now?